Euphoria Season 2, Episode 4, Jack. I got one question for you. You want to wrestle?
As a matter of fact.
I like this episode a lot. So far, this has been my favorite episode of the season. What did you think of it?
I was a fan of this episode. For me, like, this episode, just to cut to the short and long of it, performances. All around, I thought all the performances in this episode were excellent. Shout out to Eric Dane one time as Cal. Incredible performance. I thought Sydney Sweeney's, like, playing an absolutely insane person was great. The scene in the hot tub where she's throwing up was, like, hilarious. Even like Maddie, I thought, like, that scene in the hot tub too, when she's like, why'd you answer so quickly? Like, that was killing me. The Rue Jewel Elliot stuff was all great. Yeah, really good episode all around.
Yeah, I think we should start with the Eric Dane of it all. For those of you who don't know, Eric Dane is the actor who plays Cal, Nate's dad on the show. A lot of people know him from Grey's Anatomy. I never watched Grey's Anatomy, so I never knew who this dude was. I just was like, oh, there's a guy playing a character. And he was really good in season 1. And then this season, they give him a lot of shine, a lot of time. And it does feel, we were just talking about how, like, on Grey's Anatomy, he was frustrated that he wasn't allowed to, like, really do his job, which is acting.
That's what the word on the street is.
Yeah. And so you can feel the sense that this is an actor who is getting to flex muscles that he has not had the opportunity to flex in maybe ever, but definitely in some time. I love everything that he's doing in this episode. His laugh, even, because in a lesser performance, a character laughing so hysterically throughout the entirety of an episode could feel very forced, very fake, and very stupid. Sort of a cliche. It's like, oh, he's crazy. He's gone off the deep end. He's laughing. But Eric Dane, like, I just buy it. I buy his laughter. I buy his insanity. I buy everything that when he's crying when he's dancing with the guy in the gay bar. And I love his matter of factness when he comes home at the end and pisses on everything and then just tells his family exactly what's going on. I thought it was a really excellent episode of acting. And I just, this is what I love about Euphoria is they give everyone their time.
Almost everyone.
But I mean, like, in the course of the entire series, they give everybody, even characters that you don't think that you would care to be watching, their time. And in this particular episode, it was really a Cal episode. There's a lot of other stuff going on, but I think the Cal stuff is, like, the best of Euphoria so far.
Yeah, and I find myself caring for Cal now.
Yeah.
Like, just seeing him go through this, like, this complete downward spiral, and his life is falling apart. He's just drinking himself to death in this episode. He's also probably suffering from some brain injuries from when Ashtray was just beating him over the head with a gun. But, like, he does an excellent job just of, like, devolving this whole episode and just getting lower and lower and spiraling. And it was an incredible performance.
So let's just go through that whole story arc, and then we'll go to other stuff. Because we've been talking about how he needs to have a reckoning with his son. That has to happen at some point this season. I wasn't expecting it to happen in this way and at this time. But early in the episode, we set up for it. He's talking to Nate, and he's like, I'm going to go. He's like drunk, and he's like toasting him, basically. He's like, right. Here you are, the big swinging dick, big balls. And Nate has no interest in his father whatsoever. And then he goes off to the gay bar, the bar he hasn't been to in 25 years, as he mentions. And it's like, it's basically the same. And he's like rubbing his finger on people and like running his drink along the counter of the bar. And he's feeling the machine of the jukebox and starts dancing. This other guy comes up to him and starts dancing with him. He imagines it's his high school love. And all of that was payoff for the extended flashback that we got with him last week. And we kind of talked about how that was less interesting for us than maybe some other stuff they could have done. But, and I still find that to be true, but they pay it off in this episode.
Right. And I think that's, we weren't like super hot on the first 3 episodes of this year, but this episode here makes me optimistic for the rest of the season because we have gotten some payoff on some of the things that they did that we felt was kind of just like dragging a little bit, or we're just like there wasn't quite a purpose to, and we're getting payoff for those now, which makes me excited.
We already just mentioned it, but all of the stuff with Cal he comes out and he pisses on the foyer, and then he's got his 2 sons and his wife being like, "What's wrong with you?"
It's like, I think I'm lonely.
I think I'm lonely. You know how many men I've had sex with? Just, yeah, he really goes for it. And it was kind of shocking. It was because of how matter of fact it was and how like wordy it was. It was very, what I had expected was for him, because he is the kind of brute that he is, to not be able to articulate himself. But this is sort of like full de-evolution to the point where you start to evolve.
Yeah.
You know, where it's very written, but it didn't feel untrue, if that makes sense.
It was almost like we talk about like not expecting it to happen this way, but like he knew that it was going to happen eventually. So he's like, fuck it, I'll just get in front of it and be like, guys, I fuck men. Yeah.
Men, women, transsexuals.
Anyone. And like we kind of get to see more about like how like I feel like we get connection from his storyline to like the greater storylines that are going on in the show here, with like how he is saying that like his biggest disappointment in life is Nate, and like how his like life has affected Nate, and he doesn't know anything about Nate except that he's angry. Yeah, just it fascinating. No words sometimes.
Yeah, and he leaves. And he's probably still in the show because he's so great. I'd be sad if he wasn't. But he leaves the family at the end of this episode, which is pretty remarkable. And we'll have to see what that does to Nate, if anything, because so far, like, all of his trauma stems from his relationship with his father and his own repressed sexuality. And
his father knows about his repressed sexuality now too. Right. Because of what Fez revealed to him when, you know, they took Cal prisoner, basically, because Cal was trying to get him.
And Nate already knew that his father, because he knows about the sex tape, but now it's out in the open, so it's not fully repressed anymore. Now it's just kind of public, at least to these 3 characters. So I think that's probably where we'll start to go in the second half of the season. We'll have to see if Nate, because I would assume Nate would have to have a reaction to this. It's not just going to be like, all right, well, that was that thing, and now I'm going to continue to bully Cassie and Maddie.
Right.
You know,
I'm going to continue with this extremely toxic love triangle.
Yeah. Really good stuff. I really liked all of it. Let's go over to the other good stuff in this episode, carrying over from last episode, which we liked so much, all of the Rue, Jules, and Elliot stuff. This episode, I think what's interesting about this episode, all of the stuff, I expected all of these arcs to play out through the entire season. And this episode sort of just put the fast forward button on, and it was like, let's just jump into like the good stuff. And so instead of stretching out, will they, won't they, with Jules and Elliot, it's like they're making out and they're really into each other.
They really want to, and in fact they are.
Yeah. And the truth or dare scene was, this is I love this version of Euphoria, because the stakes are really high, because like these are heavy emotions that teenagers feel, and they're Jules and Rue they love each other, but they're daring each other to go further and further with Elliot. And then I also love the stealing liquor scene, which I'll talk about in a second, but all of the emotional stakes are very clear. They're very realistic to high school. They're very true. And I think that this is Euphoria at its best, because it's high school drama like that, but also some very serious interpersonal stuff going on between Elliot and Rue with drugs and how that's affecting her and all of that. So I really like this whole subplot in this episode.
I don't think any of them should be in a relationship with anyone right now, because they're all so fucked up at this current moment. And I feel like all of the relationships they could possibly have are so extremely toxic right now. Like, Jules and Rue clearly love each other, but it's also probably not a good idea for them to be in a relationship together. And you talk about the stealing alcohol thing, and I found it fascinating to me that like they brought Rue along for that. Like, we're going to go steal alcohol. And then like she drinks it and they're like, don't drink that. Right. What are you doing? Right. So much going on here.
There's so many
layers to this.
Yeah, they're totally complicit in Rue's, well, I mean, especially Elliot. Obviously, Elliot's been doing drugs with Rue this whole time. But
then he doesn't. when
Right.
they go to the bathroom, or Rue goes to the bathroom and she does drugs.
Yeah,
and
dusts her
like
nose.
Elliot's like, I'm gonna go, and then he lifts up the cup and there's, drugs there, and then he doesn't do them.
Yeah.
He just blows them into the air.
Yeah, this episode gave a lot of complexity to Elliot. That was already there, but they just sort of foreground it because up to this point he has just been sort of silly, fun, vibesy, and like, let's do drugs. And then in this episode, he starts to reckon a little bit more and more with the fact that Rue is truly an addict. And what he thought was like having fun with a friend is actually a little bit more serious than that.
She's like at a different level of drug use
Yeah.
than he is. Like he's at like just like a recreational level, and she's at like a severely addicted level where like she's gonna die.
Right.
And like we kind of get like we'll get to the scene with her in the church, but like I feel like that's somewhat like playing on that theme there.
For sure. And again, Dominic Fike's just really good in the show. We already have been through that, but he's, again, just major movie star energy. He's going to be in a lot of stuff after this. I particularly love when he confesses to Jules about the drug use with Rue. Again, he's just laying down. They got my guy laying down all the time. And
Don't stand up ever.
last thing I'll say about the stealing liquor scene is that I love that the window gets broken. That's, again, this is what I love about Euphoria. Like, these are the stakes I like. They ultimately don't come back to the broken window thing. I thought that was going to be a bigger deal, but they go steal alcohol. They run out, and at first it's just like, haha, cute little high school drama, and then broken window, which is really serious and would kind of traumatize me if I was Jules sitting in the passenger seat and the window gets cracked on me.
Someone throws I don't know what broke the window, but like they hit it with a club or they throw a brick at whatever it is. Yeah.
And like that's what I love is like kids are doing kid stuff and then it turns into adult shit, and that's heavy and scary. And that's why I like the idea of the drug world being out there, but not so much being in it, which is stuff that is going to be coming in later episodes, obviously.
Right. They're like always kind of walking this like fine line between like the high school world where like there aren't like, in the grand scheme of things, there aren't really big consequences for what happens there. And then like the real world where like there are massive consequences for your decisions.
Exactly. And it's because of that subplot also that we don't have to have a discussion like we did for Succession season 3 of if a character is dead or not. No spoilers for Succession season 3, but the end of this episode, if we did not know that there was an ongoing plot about Rue having to, pony up for drugs, I would be like, is Rue dead at the end of this episode? But it's obviously just not the case.
Right.
But let's talk about that relapse scene. As always is the case, but especially in this episode, great filmmaking.
Right.
Great filmmaking. The entire episode, the shot of when they're doing the recreations of famous like films and portraits and stuff in the beginning of the episode, the one that sticks with me is the Frida Kahlo painting.
Yeah.
Pushes in and then the big smile. It just looks like a painting, and then it's not. It's a moving painting.
I love the Brokeback Mountain one just because I thought that was funny.
Yeah.
And whenever I think about Brokeback Mountain, I think about Rick Perry.
Oh yeah.
You guys remember when Rick Perry wore that Brokeback Mountain jacket? I think he was a governor, and then he ran for president, and then he was like secretary of like powers and bullshit like that. Anyways, look it up. Brokeback Mountain Rick Perry.
But yeah, I love all of the filmmaking in this episode, but I also love when Rue gets high and they turn up the brightness on the light. Her face just sort of starts to glow, and then the fan turns on and her hair is blowing. And then we get the whole hallucination dream sequence of her going into the church, which is just beautiful and haunting. And
Labyrinth is singing.
Labyrinth is just is such an integral part of the show. The musical tone of the show is so consistent and so deeply infused with the themes of the show. It's pretty powerful stuff, and so yeah, that was cool that Labyrinth is singing there, and Rue embraces Labyrinth and then is embracing her father, and all of this stuff is going on, and it does feel so much like the end of a character. Like it feels like a death.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, do you think that we come out of this relapse and she starts a new character arc, or do you think we just kind of go back to what we've been going through? Because we've seen Rue relapse.
Right.
And we've seen stuff like this.
She's been in a relapse for this whole season now. Like,
Right.
she's been high the whole time.
Yeah, I guess the question is more so, do you think that this is rock bottom and she's going to start to change, or do you think she's going to stay at rock bottom?
It's tough because every time I feel like Rue is at rock bottom, she gets to another rock bottom. Like, I thought episode 3, when like she decided to sell the drugs and was like, or quote unquote, sell the drugs, which it kind of seems like she has no intention on selling.
Right.
When was yelling at Ali, I thought that was her rock bottom. And then this one here, I now think is her rock bottom. I don't know if she can go deeper. I kind of, when I saw this scene, I first thought it was like her seeing herself at her own funeral, kind of. And like, it plays out as like kind of this like world between like life and like she's kind of in purgatory right now. And that's like her embracing with her father and stuff, which I don't know. I thought this whole scene was like so good and so powerful. But to answer your question, it's like, yeah, I think this is her rock bottom, but that doesn't mean she can't get lower.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy too, is because again, like I said, like we know that there's a whole storyline, a whole plot point that has to be fulfilled. That's the difference between like Succession season 3, when a character maybe dies or doesn't die, is like they wrote that character to the end, and so it is believable that this is the end of that character. In this season of Euphoria, it's like they wrote this character to an end, but there's like 3 other plot points that have to get resolved with this character. Minimally, obviously she's the main character.
And she's the narrator
and
too.
she's the narrator, but
so really interesting though, she was the narrator except for like the last line of this episode, which was Jules. So if you want to talk about that at all, go ahead.
That's where like, oh, is Rue dead, and are they pivoting the show over to Jules as the narrator? And that would be worth conversation for a week, if not for the fact that Rue has to pay off the drug money. Of course, you know, just because like Rue could be dead, and then her loved ones have to face those consequences. But I don't know how exactly that would be enacted. And also, I always have in the back of my head that line that Zendaya gave that I talked about last week, about how she thinks that Rue is going to be okay one day because Rue is Sam Levinson. And Sam Levinson is okay. So I don't think that she is dead, although that Jules moment at the end where Jules starts to narrate is really interesting, because the show utilizes the experience of Hunter Schafer and of the character of Jules being trans, and it feels like in this episode with that last line, it's almost giving even more ownership to that story, as if to say like it's not just a part of the story, but it is the story also, which I think is pretty interesting and powerful. And I wonder if this is just a gimmick for an episode where Rue is passed out, like in a coma in a hospital for an episode, and Jules takes over the narration for an episode until Rue gets back, or if this becomes a split narration series and then they split time as basically the main characters.
Yeah, or if they're just like opening up the door for like, if they wanted to, they can also have Jules narrate this too. Right.
It does sort of seem like Rue is now incapable of narrating because Rue is incapacitated.
She's so unreliable right now.
Yeah. And so that's great filmmaking. That's really smart, and provocative and interesting. So that's something to get excited about going forward.
I want to say like last thing about that scene too.
Yeah.
Like when they snap out of like the hallucination and we see her from the window and she's like still like hugging her dad, but there's no one there. Like I thought that was a great moment too.
Yeah. Yeah. And, great performance by Zendaya as always. The single tear running down the cheek as she's hugging Pops. Really, really sweet. Let's switch over to our favorite storyline. Cassie, Nate, and Maddie. This episode was better.
Yeah, I agree.
This was better because, and I figured this out, Cassie doesn't have a character yet. She's not a character. And that's by design, obviously, because her whole thing is trying to figure out, because she's obsessed with validation through men. And so her arc as a character is going to be figuring out like self-love and how to find validation, or maybe you don't even need it, through another sort of force, whether it's yourself or through something that's more healthy than men. And so that's her arc. And so it makes sense that she doesn't know who she is or what she wants. But that's kind of why I felt like these first 3 episodes were running a little dry for me, was because like she doesn't really move the needle at all. It was in this episode where they finally give her the opportunity to fight back. They sort of figured out what was wrong with this to begin with, and that's really, it was really sort of on the Cassie character, because she just doesn't have any agency. She doesn't know who she is, and so now she's getting that opportunity.
Yeah, I think when just in, you know, shows, media in general, when characters don't have an opportunity to like impact what happens to them at all, like I don't think they're very interesting characters. And like for the first several episodes of the season, like Cassie wasn't doing anything to, you know, change or affect the circumstances around her or her storyline at all. And now she is. So there's like more for us to like work with there and get invested into. And I think even for Maddie, like she hasn't had much to do of anything this year. Mm-hmm. But like I feel like they gave her at least like a hint of maybe a want on this one with her like I took her like gazing out on like the family she babysits for, like playing in the pool. Like that's what she wants, is she wants this like idyllic lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like this family lifestyle, and like where they're rich in the big house and like this happy family. Like she wants that. But she's obviously never going to get that with Nate.
Right.
But she thinks maybe she is. And then Nate's just awful. No one likes Nate. There's nothing to like about Nate.
No, there's nothing to like about him. I think that they've what I think maybe is successful about Nate so far this season is in the writing of Nate, rather, they've slowed down the Nate is a complete psychopath thing. We've always known his flaws and his repression and like his relationship to his father. So we always understood where his issues came from. But in season 1, he was a true blue psychopath.
He's beating people up.
He's too far gone. And then, you know, by the time we get to season 2, he gets his ass beat and everyone's like, yeah. And then after that, they're like, we're going to slow down on this. We're going to calm down a little bit, because maybe we do need to empathize with him a little bit.
And they did put him on the defensive in this episode too, because now instead of like him going after like Cassie and Maddie, like Cassie's going after him and is like threatening him that like she's gonna ruin their life now too. So again, just like a little more to work with now.
And then Cassie, of course, pukes in the hot tub and just is hysterical after that. And it's really funny. Also another just beautiful, sort of not so subtle, but very good, just visual filmmaking moment as Cassie's going off, looks at Nate looks at Cassie, and then continues to walk and then puts the towel over Maddie. Mm-hmm. Again, just visually representing that whole love triangle. I'm still not particularly interested, but I think that this was a step in the right direction.
Yeah, we maybe got it so that like I'm not completely bored by it.
Yeah.
Because like the first 3 episodes, I like, especially episode 3, like I just wasn't into it at all.
Yeah.
Like their love triangle that's going on. Maybe there's something that comes from it now. I think in large part that's because like something actually like happened in this episode with it. Whereas like in the like first 3, we just like, it's going on. Yeah. It's a thing that's happening. Yeah, we'll see where it goes. I don't know. I would like to think that in some ways it ties back to Nate and his relationship with his father. Mm-hmm. Because there's still this tape out here. So
yeah. Do you think that there is redemption for Nate, or do you think that they're softening Nate so that they could pull the rug out from under us and he goes back to being full psycho?
I think maybe the latter of those options is more likely, because it feels like it'd be so hard for that character to be fully redeemed.
Yeah.
But like I feel like they could be trying to like pull a old rope-a-dope on us per se. Yeah,
because the tape being out there really does sort of set us up for something like that, because he's trying to get back with Maddie. It's very clear that he doesn't love Maddie. He is sort of sociopathic. I don't think he feels much of anything.
No.
So it feels very much like he's just trying to get the tape back. So I feel like there is a high potential that he goes full psycho at the end of the season and like ruins both of their lives. Other stuff that happened in this episode, small cat moment. She hates Ethan. It felt like an after school special a little bit. No offense to the writers, of course, but it was so fast and direct. It felt like they were trying to move off of the scene as fast as they could, where she's like, something good happens to me and then I feel 1,000 times worse. Well, there's a difference between what you want and what you think you want. what do I want? And it's like, well, that's what you have to figure out. It was just like very quick and direct.
Right. And it's like maybe if we had more of that character in this episode and really just in this season as a whole, like that's better. But like quite literally getting one scene every episode with that character, it's like, okay, whatever.
Right. If they cut all of her scenes up out of each episode and then just mash them into one little solo episode, it's probably a decent episode.
Mm-hmm.
But as it is like it's not fulfilling enough. It's a small snack. And so yeah, that happens. We get a little bit of the auditions for the school play for Lexi, and a little bit of Fez. He pops up in this episode.
Yeah, Mouse's baby mama knows that he's missing now.
Right. So that's a thing. This is the midway point of the season, so it's only going to get crazier from here. Is there anything else from this episode you want to talk about before we wrap it up?
Not particularly. I hope it gets crazier from here. I felt like this was a good start of like, crazy is not like the right word, but like events actually occurring.
Yeah.
Because it felt like the first 3 episodes were a lot of like build up and we were just kind of like at a plateau. And this one, it finally feels like we got a little bit of like action going on, and the gears are moving and there's movers and shakers going on. So I'm just hoping we get some of these like strings they've been pulling on come to fruition, and like we get something going on.
Didn't love the first 3 episodes. Episode 4, good job. I think we said it all. Listen to all of our other podcasts and stuff. But we're going to cut this one short because we got to go wrestle.
Yeah.
We got to go wrestle.
Mr. Clean.
You guys, I'm a state champion. You think you'd take me? Oh, God, they got me. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful week.